Today's training is going to be on the electronic timers, the FarmTech timer control box, for use for a SpeedWay CPE trial. This box has nothing to be afraid of. It's something that you should be using if you have, along with the timer eyes, to get the most accurate times for the dogs competing at your events. So we're going to go through some basics of the timers and how to set them up for SpeedWay, and more specifically how to use them for a pit stop where you have multiple passes on the finish tunnel, and how to retrieve a time, and a couple other things that you might want to be able to know how to do. So first of all, when you're looking at the screen, once you had it turned on, you're going to have a time up here. If I start it, when the next dog goes, I don't have to get it back to 0. You're going to hit your go button, which if I had a horn hooked up would have the ready or the go voice. When the dog passes through the eye to start the run, the time will automatically go back to 0 and start over. Okay, the time should run uninterrupted until the dog has finished the course. If for some reason it stops during the middle of a run, your timer needs to know, sorry I double clicked, the timer needs to know that if they hit this button up here, the red restart button, the machine is actually continuing to track the time that that dog has been running, and when they hit the restart, it will resume where they are. If the time stops and they hit the black start button, it will start back at 0. So it's very important that the timer know that if there is a timer issue and the timer stops during a run, that they hit the red restart button. Okay, so that's something you want to make sure that all of your timers know. We're going to go into how to actually set it up for usage for the SpeedWay trial. So the key to programming everything on the timer box is controlled under this white setup button, and then you read what's in the bottom screen down here, and it's pretty much follow what it says. So the first thing we want to make sure is that we're on the correct venue rules. If you have a club that does multiple venues and they use, say, AKC timing, it functions very different than the timing for a CPE trial. So I don't want to do enter. I want to see the next thing. Actually, I do want to hit enter. I want to enter to see agility rules. And I want to see what I'm on. There's AKC rules. ASCA rules, which is what I actually use for my CPE trials. NADAC rules. USDA rules, which is what the manual will tell you to use. It works exactly like the ASCA rule, except for there's one extra screen on USDA that we do not use, so I use ASCA rules just to make it simpler for me. CKC rules, which are up in Canada, I do believe. AAC rules, which is another venue. International rules. Practice mode. And no change. So we want to make sure that we are on ASCA or USDA. Once you have it where you want, you're going to hit enter. It will say done, and then it leads you on the next screen, which is exactly where we need to go. We need to enter our times. So we don't want to enter a standard course time. We want to enter a maximum course time, since teams are allowed 60 seconds to play in SpeedWay as their maximum time. So we're going to hit next choice. That brings you to maximum course time. You're going to hit enter. These buttons all have little numbers in the lower left hand corner. SpeedWay gets 60 seconds, so we want to do 6, 0, and then the enter button. Again, it's going to say done. We don't need any game horns for this, so we're going to go to next choice. Here is the next important one for a pit stop course. This is press enter to set finish eye. Normally the timer assumes that there is only one trip through the finish obstacle, and so when the dog goes through the finish timers the first time, the time will stop. If we want it to be something different, we need to tell the computer how many times the dog is expected to go through that finish obstacle. So there is stop on finish pass 1, 2, 3, 4, or finish eye off. So let's say our pit stop course has 2 passes through the finish tunnel. I am going to select the enter to stop on pass 2. It's going to come up with done, and then it's going to go back to dog agility, and you should have I1 and I2. I have an X and X because I don't actually physically have my timers out right now. I just have the control box. The other thing you're going to notice now is that when you start the time, it's now going to flash down here the I's 1, 2, and the word off. That tells me that the computer knows that it's waiting for the dog to pass through that tunnel the first time. Once the dog passes through the tunnel the first time, it'll come back on to solid I's 1, 2. The time would still be running. Alright, I hit restart, so it's going to assume the eye needs to be off again. And it's going to continue to go until the dog goes through the finish. You need to make sure that you brief your timer again on this run, that if the dog takes that finish tunnel an extra time or two, that at some point in time, when the dog is taking it correctly, the timer is going to stop and the dog is not going to be finished with the course. At that point in time, the timer needs to hit the restart button before the dog comes back through the tunnel. It doesn't have to be like that instant. You can see we've been talking for quite a long time. If I hit the restart, 34 seconds had passed and it's still tracking that time. So as long as you hit the restart button before the dog gets back there again, you're fine. If the dog goes back through there with the time not running, it's going to think that that's the start of the next dog's run, and then you're not going to have a time for that dog. The other option that tends to happen, or thing that tends to happen, is that the scribe forgets to record the time for a dog. If that happens, there is no problem. This control box stores the last 100 times that have been recorded, as long as nobody turns off the box. So if I hit previous choice and look down here on the bottom, the last recorded time was 2.78 seconds, then 1833, 1659, 0.52, 00, and those are the times that I have in the box. So I could go back and retrieve, if I know it was 4 dogs ago, I could go back and retrieve that dog's time. Alright, and you can move forward and backwards, again reading the little screen to get that previous dog's time. Alright, couple of other things that you may want to actually do is if you're timing your walks, it is preset on mine to 5 minutes. Again, if another venue has run and they have a different walkthrough time, you can go scroll through this little screen on the setup until you get to advanced menu, walkthrough time, and you can change that to whatever you want. So if we were doing an 8-minute walk, just let I do something different. And then it also, if you have a newer unit, it'll have your press your post walkthrough time. So for CPE, we generally set this at 5 and 5 now, so that you can then have your walkthrough, and at the end of your walkthrough, the count up will start. So if you're having a split walkthrough, you have everybody in there at the same time. Before you can run dogs, you need to make sure that you are no longer in this menu. You do that by hitting the setup and make sure it says dog agility eyes number 1 and 2. So those are the basic things that you have on the timer. The other thing you might want to do is if you have a dog who does start and the timer doesn't start right away and the timer notices it, they can quickly hit the horn button and that'll beep the buzzer so that it'll draw the team's attention and the course marshal's attention so they know that something is not working with the timer. It's very important in Speedway that you keep an eye on the eyes 1 and 2, especially with the lighter hoops and the tunnels. The hoop will often get pushed in between the eye and break the beam, therefore it won't be working, or the tunnel will move and the same thing will happen. It's also very important on the tunnels to keep an eye on it to make sure a tunnel has not shifted to where the upright for the timer is in the dog's path for the tunnel. So it's very, very important that you keep an eye on that. The other thing that you can do is when course builders go to build, if you hit this little button up here that says eyes off, you'll notice that it now flashes eye off. That will keep the horn from going off every 60 seconds because somebody moved the timer eyes, and you get this buzzing all the time. So I like to turn that off. When you hit the countdown, it will clear out. So again, I can do eyes off. I can do countdown. Once I do the countdown, it's going to flash eyes off during the countdown because it's not going to score a dog. That's really important also after the walkthrough that the timer does do the go button, especially for the first dog, because if you've ended the walkthrough early and it's still doing a countdown, it will not start until it's told that dogs are running agility or speedway again. So you need to make sure you press your go button. So that's pretty much all about the timers. Most of the newer units have wireless speakers, so you don't need to plug the speaker into the audio. There's an easy way to know whether that's true or not. If when you turn on your speaker, it does the beep, 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 then you do not need a cable to hook it up to your control box. If when you turn on the speaker it says nothing, then it is a wired speaker, and then you do need the little black cable that comes with the control box to go in there. On-off switches on the top. Batteries go in the back. It should have 4 batteries in it. This one currently only has 2 and it's still functioning, so that should tell you something about the timers and how much they really need. Alright, so there's all of that information for you. If you have any questions or if this is not clear, please let me know and I will do my best to answer your questions. We really want teams using electronic timers with the eyes so that we can get accurate scores on these dogs. When you're having runs that are 10, 12, 14, 16 seconds long, it's not fair to the dogs to have the human error of how long it takes somebody to press a button determining their final score. So do your best to use the timers. If something goes wrong and your timer eyes aren't working, that's a different story. But if you have timer eyes, you should be using them for your Speedway trials so you can get accurate times on all the dogs. So thank you very much and have a great day.